Hello friends, so I am back with the lesson 2 in the series of Union Budget 2019-20 through infographics, right? So in the first lesson we have already discussed many areas. So my suggestion is that before you start watching this particular video, please go back to the previous video and watch that. Now these are the areas which we have already discussed in the previous video. We have discussed about the women initiatives, Nari to Narayani. That is the slogan that was given by the budget 1920. Then we have seen the initiatives for the middle class. The initiatives like giving the tax exemption of 1.5 lakh for the housing loan up to rupees 45 lakh. Then there are many initiatives for the younger generation. For example, Study in India program, which will try to attract the foreign students to study in India. Then there are a lot of initiatives for the farmers, including one of the very important initiative for the fishermen, that is Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. Then for the small businessman, we are also having various initiatives, and one of the important initiative is giving the pension to a small businessman whose turnover is rupees 1.5 crore or less. Then for the startups, various initiatives, for example, to resolve the angel tax issues without much hassle. So all these are the points that we have discussed in the previous video. Now we will start with some new aspects. So first of all, let us see the central government expenditure. So as we have already seen in the previous video, that central government expenditure can be divided into the revenue portion and the capital portion, and then there are various heads inside the budget, right? Now if we see for the examination perspective, what is important, that you should know what are the major items of expenditure and what is the expenditure into different areas, right? So first of all, the total expenditure is approximately 27.86 lakhs crore. And if we see the highest amount in a head, so can you identify? I am giving you 2 seconds to identify the highest amount given to a particular head out of this particular slide. Okay, so we can see here in the interest. So in the interest, 6.6 lakh crore is the highest expenditure under any particular head. Second highest expenditure is under the defense, 3.05 lakh crore, and third one is under the subsidies, 3.01 lakh crore. So what are the three major expenses? The first one is the interest, the second one is the defense, and the third one is the subsidies, right? So you should remember this order of expenses, because in the prelims examination they can ask the major headings of expenditure. And when we see this, we can also observe a pattern that our interest is forming more than 20% of our total expenditure. So if we really want to decrease the revenue deficit, and if we really want to control the fiscal deficit, then we should reduce the interest burden. And how we can reduce the interest burden? There are 2 ways possible, right? One, we can repay the existing loan. Second, we can reduce the rate of interest on the borrowing that we are taking, right? So repaying the loan again is not an easy task. We can't repay the loan easily. However, the second option, that is reducing the interest rate on the loan that we receive, is possible through maintaining a good business environment, so that the sovereign rating of India is good and the foreign funds can come at a lower rate of interest to India. So this is how we can reduce the interest cost. Secondly, defense. So in the defense, we are not willing to reduce because we have a lot of challenges to face. And one more important thing you should know, that inside the defense expenses, the revenue expenditure as well as the capital expenditure, both are included. So even if it is a regular expenses or it is the expenditure for procuring some big aircraft carrier, both the expenses will come in the current year expenses only, in the revenue expenses only. That is why we can say the defense expenditure will form a big portion. The third is the subsidy. Subsidy is a very, very huge amount. We are a welfare state as per the Constitution of India, and we are a socialistic economy. So we are giving the subsidy to those people who can't afford to live their life with dignity without subsidy, right? So these subsidies we are giving. Now let us see the classification of subsidy into different headings, and we also need to see that which is the head that is occupying the largest amount of subsidy. So I am giving you again 5 seconds to identify the largest head which is occupying the subsidy from this chart. So please analyze.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So it is very clearly visible that the food subsidy is the highest one. So after the introduction of National Food Security Act in 2013, where we are covering almost 67% of the population, we can not reduce the food subsidy suddenly, right? So food subsidy we can't reduce suddenly. It is the basic necessity, right? Then second is the fertilizer subsidy. Fertilizer subsidy is again high, and there are two reasons why this is high. First reason is that crude oil prices have been very high in the recent years, and that has a direct impact upon the fertilizer prices. Secondly, the fertilizer sector is facing a lot of issues, especially regarding the governance issues. There is corruption, and the import price is comparatively high. We don't have the good joint ventures or the projects with the other countries. So these are the different reasons why the fertilizer sector is not completely reformed. We are taking various steps, for example, introducing the direct benefit transfer in the fertilizer, but still this sector is yet to transform a lot. So the point I want to make is that the highest amount is expended on the food, and the second highest amount is expended on the fertilizer, and the third one is the petroleum. So therefore we can see that this is the order, and in the examination they can ask the order of subsidy and the different heads in ascending order or in descending order. So you should know top 3 heads. So the highest one is the food subsidy, second highest is the fertilizer subsidy, and the third highest is the petroleum subsidy, right? So this is the extent of subsidies, and if we see the overall subsidies, 3.38 lakh crore out of the 26 lakh crore, so we can see the total subsidy is forming approximately 1.5% of GDP. So approximately 1.5% of GDP is the total amount of subsidy. So friends, there is a debate. Should subsidies be continued or not? Should not we replace the subsidy with the investment? So friends, we introduced the subsidy at the time of independence because our large population was poor and they were not able to afford the basic things. And we said that let us support them first for a few years, and when they become capable, then we don't require the subsidy. But this plan could not succeed, and now the subsidy have become a norm. Especially during the elections, the new governments announced more and more subsidy. They announced more and more populist programs, so which is not a good thing, right? So in the long term, subsidies are not sustainable because they create a burden over the fiscal. They create the kind of dependency of the people over the government, which is not a good thing, right? So this subsidy should be avoided. In the long term, this subsidy should be replaced by the investment. this much amount, rather than giving to the public as a subsidy, we should invest into the relevant areas, maybe in the food sector, maybe the fertilizer sector. So investment should be there, which will increase the productive capacity of the economy as well as provide a lot of jobs to the people. And when people have jobs, they will have income, and when they will have income, then they do no longer require the subsidy. So we have to set a virtuous cycle of investment. And this is what the economic survey of this year has said, that we should set the virtuous cycle of investment, savings, exports, and the demographic dividend, right? So all this discussion you can see in the economic survey video. I will give detailed discussion over there only. Now there is a fiscal deficit we have seen in the current year. The fiscal deficit is 3.3%, and the sources of fiscal deficit, we can see that from where the money is coming. The highest amount of money, if we see in the budget estimate of 1920, it is expected to come from securities against the small savings. So securities against the small savings come under the public accounts. The amount that is deposited by the common man with the government into different small saving schemes, that is coming over here. So this is technically not a borrowing, but a liability, because the government has not gone to the people that please give me the money. Rather, people themselves came to the government that please keep our money. So it is not a borrowing of the government, but it is an obligation of the government. So technically it is part of the fiscal deficit, but still it is not part of the borrowing of the government. Then the second one is the state provident funds. So provident fund are the retirement funds. People deposit their money into the provident fund so that they can get at the time of retirement fund. Again, this is a part of the public account only. Then third one is the other receipts, reserve fund, deposit, advances. Then external debt is very, very low, in fact negative. So negative external debt basically means that we have repaid the external debt in the current year. There is a net repayment in the current year, which is a very, very good thing. We know that the Eurozone crisis, which started in 2011, that was because the Eurozone countries, especially the PIGS countries, they had huge amount of loans from the outside countries. So there was a sovereign debt which was very, very high level. But with India, the good thing is that our sovereign debt from the external countries is very, very, very minimal. So out of the total external debt of our country, just approximately 20% is from the outside India, and 80% is from inside India. So this is a good thing. So we remain immune to the global impacts as far as our overall fiscal health is concerned. Then the current year budget is talking about that we should become the $5 trillion economy. So right now, do you know how much is our the worth of our economy? Do you know? So let me tell you, we are soon going to cross $3 trillion economy status. That's a good news, right? So around from now, around 5 years after, 5 years after from now, we are aiming basically that we become the $5 trillion economy. So that is the vision that has been led by the government, and the economic survey is also talking about that how should we move ahead, as well as the budget has taken many initiatives in this context. So let us see what are the initiatives, because the $5 trillion economy requires a lot of investment. It is requiring a lot of investment. So what are the different measures that government has proposed in the current budget for raising this investment? So the first is enhancing the sources of capital for the infrastructure financing. See friends, infrastructure is the backbone of the economy. If we have very good infrastructure, then the connectivity is good, energy access is good, and the social services are good. So infrastructure needs to be built. Now for that infrastructure we need the capital. So the government is talking about enhancing the sources of capital for the infrastructure. And what are the sources? Let us see. Credit Guarantee Enhancement Corporation to be set up in 2019-20. So Credit Guarantee Enhancement Corporation. So this kind of organization is supposed to be set up so that when the banks give the loan to the infrastructure companies, then this corporation will ensure that in case of default by those particular companies, the banks are getting back their dues. So this will providing kind of guarantee or insurance to the bank so that bank can freely lend the amount from their pockets. So this will enhance the credit source for the capital financing. Then action plan to deepen the market for the long-term bonds. Very important. Long-term bonds are not developed in India. See, why we need the long-term bonds? So we are requiring a lot of investment in the infrastructure sector if we really want to become the $5 trillion economy. And if we see the major sources of financing, it is the bank. So bank is the major source of financing. Now the bank can lend for approximately 5 year to 10 year. So the lending capacity of bank is for a short to medium term, say 10 year. However, the infrastructure project required the funds for approximately 25 years. For example, it is for a power plant or for a airport or port. So they require the funds for maybe 20 or 25 years. So this mismatching, the bank is providing the fund for the short to medium term and the infrastructure sector requires the fund for the long term. So this mismatch needs to be built. So what we need is the long term bond market which will provide the financing for 25 years. So this mismatch will become the matching. So this long term bond market needs to be developed. So the budget is proposing the action plan for that. Then 100% foreign direct investment will be permitted for the insurance intermediaries. So this will increase the FDI. This will enhance the insurance sector, which is a kind of security for the common man. Local sourcing norms will be eased for the FDI in the single brand retail sector. So friends, single brand retail sector, can you identify any particular company with this single brand retail sector? So for example, you wear the jeans of Levi's. So that is the example of single brand retail sector. So here at present, if the FDI is coming into this sector, this kind of companies are investing into India, then the local sourcing norms are very high. What is the meaning of local sourcing norms? It means that when they are producing their goods, they need to procure the raw material from the local area. They can't import from the outside India. So for example, they need to buy a minimum 30% of their raw material from the Indian companies only. Even if it may not be viable, even if because of that procurement they have to make the loss. So this is the current norm. Now because of this norm, the FDI is not coming because at times the local raw material may be expensive. So to attract the FDI, the government is now saying that these local sourcing norms will be relaxed. Maybe we will say that you need to procure only 10% material from the local market, or you don't need to procure any material from the local market. So in this way, we can at least attract the FDI. If the FDI is coming into India, even if they are not procuring the raw material from India, at least our people will get the job. At least our government will get the taxes. At least the infrastructure will develop in and around the industry. So we will have other major benefits, right? So this is what the government has proposed. Then increase in the statutory limit for FPI investment in a company from 24% to sectoral foreign investment limit. तो सर आप सोच रहे होंगे तो सिर के ऊपर से निकल गया, समझ नहीं आया कुछ. ओके, चलिए आपको समझाता हूं मैं. So first of all, increase in the statutory limit for FPI investment. What is FPI? Foreign portfolio investment. So this is different from FDI. FDI and FPI, these are the two streams of the foreign capital, right? So FDI is for the long term, and it is a kind of direct investment into the company. FPI is comparatively for the short term, and this is comprising the categories like foreign institutional investors and the QFIs, and they are investing into the stock market normally, right? So we are talking about the FPI, not about the FDI. So in the FPI there are sectoral limits. Now what is the meaning of sectoral limit? So sectoral limit basically means that in a particular sector, if a company is there, inside that company, how much maximum ownership can belong to the FPI holder. So for example, in the e-commerce sector, if the sectoral limit is say 74%, then any foreign player can hold maximum 74% in that sector. That is a sectoral limit, and that is a statutory limit of the sector, that particular sector. So what we are saying here is increase the statutory limit for FPI investment in a company from 24% to sectoral foreign investment limit. So suppose sectoral foreign investment limit is 74%, and earlier the 74%, and the statutory limit basically means the limit as per the law. This is just 24%. So now what we are saying, from 24%, now the foreign investor can invest 74% through the FPI route. So earlier, through the FPI route, a particular investor can invest only 24%. Now they can invest up to 74%. I think the thing is clear to you. Then merger of the NRI portfolio scheme route with the foreign portfolio investment route to provide NRIs seamless access to the Indian equities. So this is a very specific thing, you don't need to know this. Now again the same points have been repeated. Credit Guarantee Announcement Corporation, action plan for the long-term bonds, and to permit investment made by the FPI and debt securities issued by the IDF. Now, infrastructure for the 5 trillion economy. As I have already told you, we need connectivity, energy access, and the social services, and that is possible only through the good infrastructure. And in the infrastructure, we need to have the transportation infrastructure like the roadway, the railway, the inland waterways, the ports, the airports. And on the other hand, we also need to have the energy, for example, the water, the gas, and so on. So government has taken a lot of initiatives in this regard. Now, what are these initiatives? So the first initiative is comprehensive restructuring of the National Highway Development Program. So we have a program like NHDP. So we are going to restructure that program so that National Highway Grid of desirable length is created. National Highway Grid. Using the financiable model. Financiable model basically means that we need to decide the source of financing. Will it be from the public sector or the private sector? Will it be purely private sector or it will be the public-private partnership? So what will be the financing model and how this highway grid will be developed, we are going to decide that. And the second major initiative is with respect to the railways. So in respect to the railways, the government is talking about introducing the public-private partnership in those areas of railway where it was not introduced earlier. So what is public-private partnership? What is PPP? So PPP, the name itself shows there are two partners, public and private, and they are having the partnership. That is why this term is partnership. So in the PPP, the public and the private sector are coming together to execute a public project or to provide some public service, and the private sector infuses its capital, or the private sector infuses the management skills and takes care of the operations, right? So either the private sector can contribute both the capital and the management, or it can contribute any of the one, especially the management. In that case, this is called public-private partnership. So the railways has traditionally been completely a public sector undertaking. This is a department of the government, which comes under the ministry, right? So now we are saying that in certain areas like tracks, like rolling stock manufacturing, like delivery of the passenger freight services, the public-private partnership can be introduced. So this kind of scenario we are talking about for the first time, so that the efficiency of the services can be introduced, can be enhanced. So we have seen in the previous video that the operating ratio of the railways is very, very high. It is more than 95%, which is not a good sign. So this operating ratio needs to be reduced, and that is why we need to reduce this. We need to introduce this public-private partnership so that we can gain the access to the efficiency. I am repeating, efficiency of the private sector. If the efficiency of the private sector is introduced, then we can reduce the operating ratio, right? So ultimate purpose is to reduce the operating ratio. If the operating ratio is reduced, definitely the fiscal burden will get reduced over the government, because the government don't need to provide more resources to the railway. The railway will become independent, right? So you have to interlink every aspect. Now next is that blueprint for developing gas grid, water grid, inland waterways grid and regional airports. So this is what will be planned. Then upgradation of 1,25,000 kilometers of road length over the next 5 years. So this will be upgraded. The road is already existing. This will be now upgraded. See, in India, what is missing? We are taking a lot of construction activity, but what is missing is upgradation and maintenance. Maintenance is the most missing thing in India. So we need to really focus upon the maintenance and the upgradation of the existing infrastructure, so that the life of the existing roads is increased and we don't need to construct it again and again. And this will be under the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana part 3. So friends, upgradation is not equal to maintenance. Maintenance is a different thing. Upgradation is that we are taking the road to the next level. If it is a kacha road, then we are making it pakka road. If it is a pakka road, then we are making it further strong, maybe cemented or the black road. 1.95 crore houses to be provided to the eligible beneficiaries, that we have already seen. Higher investment in the suburban railways through special purpose vehicles like RRTS. So this regional rapid transport system, RRTS, the first project under this has been introduced between the Delhi and Meerut in the Uttar Pradesh. So this project, why this project? Because see, Delhi is a capital city and it sees a lot of influx of the people from outside the city. It is a national capital. The people keep coming here, people keep coming here, but it can't sustain much of the people. So the nearby areas like Gurgaon, Ghaziabad, Meerut and all these areas are developed. Now when the people are working in the Delhi, they need to travel on a daily basis, and if the travel is not easy, then they people will like to settle in the Delhi. So to avoid the congestion in Delhi, the overpopulation in Delhi, the inflation in Delhi, we are now developing the RRTS so that the people can stay outside Delhi as far as residence is concerned, and they can travel to Delhi on a daily basis without any hassle. So this is our context behind the RRTS. So this kind of suburban network we need to develop all over India, so that this problems related to urbanization will get resolved, right? So whenever there is a question of urbanization, you can mention this point. Launch of massive program for the modernization of railway stations. Very, very important. Development of infrastructure connectivity. There are other areas regarding the connectivity. When we are talking about the connectivity, it means road, rail or air or water, right? So first is the launch of India's first indigenously developed payment ecosystem for the transport. So under this initiative, the government will provide a single digital card and we can travel through that card across the bus, metro, railway, air, waterway, anywhere we can go with that single card only, and that card will be linked to your RuPay account, right? So in this way the seamless payment ecosystem can be created. Then expansion of the metro rail projects across more cities, enabling the ecosystem for the growth of maintenance, repair, overhaul industry for self-reliance in the aviation sector. So in the aviation sector, the maintenance, repair and overhaul is missing, and we are dependent on the other nations, so we need to be independent. That is why this is there. Second phase of Bharat Mala to help states develop the state road network. So in the first phase of Bharat Mala, we have been connecting the different capital cities of the countries. Now what we are saying is that in the second phase, now we will be connecting the different cities inside the state only. Then commencement of phase 2 of the FAME for faster adoption of the electrical vehicles. So for the electrical vehicles, the government is coming up with various initiatives. One of the initiatives is the GST has been reduced from the 12% to the 5%. Public-private partnership for the railway infrastructure we have already seen, and Jal Marg Vikas, multimodal transport terminals at the Sahibganj and Haldia, and the navigational lok at the Fadak to be completed in 2019-20. So this is regarding the water infrastructure. Then in the energy sector, 7 crore LPG connections have already been given. 100% household have to be provided with the electricity. And again, when Union Finance Minister was presenting her budget, she made it very clear that we are talking about 100% for those people who are not saying that we don't need it. So the exception is those people who are saying that we don't need the connection because we will not pay in the future, we will not pay the bill. So we are not including those people in this 100%. By 2022, every single rural family have electricity connection and have cooking facility. So these are the two initiatives, the Saubhagya Yojana, under which we are providing the household level connectivity, and the Ujjwala Yojana, under which we are providing the free LPG connection. These two initiatives have really transformed the life of the women in the rural areas. Now coming to the very important area, that is the taxation. So taxation is something which haunts the middle class, right? And the people have a lot of expectation. When people hear about the budget, they think that something is coming up for them in the taxation. So let us see what are the reforms being undertaken in the taxation. And before that, let us see some of the trends in the taxation. So there is a high chance of coming of prelims question from this area. So first of all, let us see the trends in tax receipts. So first of all, the tax receipts are part of the revenue receipts, and the gross tax receipts as a percentage of GDP, it actually indicates the tax to GDP ratio. And tax to GDP ratio in India, if we see the fluctuation from in the last 8 years, so in the 11-12 it was 10.2%, then it was highest in the 18-19, and now it is 11.7%. So this is higher than the 10%, and we can see that our tax to GDP ratio has been increasing, except in the current year where it is decreasing. Now if we see the breakup between the direct tax and the indirect tax, so the direct tax is more than the indirect tax. So can you think, is it a good thing or bad thing? Is it a desirable situation or undesirable situation? I mean, a good economy, should it have the direct taxes more than indirect tax, or the indirect tax is more than direct tax? So the direct taxes can be more than indirect taxes. Why? Because the direct taxes are the progressive. They are under the progressive system in India. Progressive system basically means that higher the income, higher the taxes. Lower the income, lower the taxes. So those people who can't afford to pay the taxes, they are not supposed to pay the tax. So direct tax reflects a very good thing. However, in case of indirect tax, we are following the regressive system. And in the regressive system, everyone needs to pay the equal percentage of tax. So if suppose there is a 5% tax on a particular item of food, so even if it is a rickshawala or it is a son of any rich person, maybe a manis, both of them needs to pay the 5% goods and services tax. So overall, if we see for the rickshawala, that 5% money can be a very big amount, but for the Ambanis, it means nothing. So the indirect tax does not differentiate between the rich and poor. Therefore, it is putting a disproportionate burden over the poor people. So overall, the good thing is that the indirect taxes are lower than the direct taxes, right? And in the current budget estimate, the direct taxes are supposed to be 6.3 and indirect taxes are expected to be 5.3. So if we see between 1819 and now, there is a decline. And why there is a decline? Because the GST collections have not been so much good. However, there is an overall increment, but still the GST collections are not that much encouraging, and we need to really take some reforms in the GST area. Now, the government is coming up with various direct tax reforms so that the tax base is increased and the people do not face any kind of hassle in paying the taxes. Because see, people are ready to pay the taxes, but the problem is that they are fearful of the harassment by the tax officer, and they are also fearful about the difficulty in procedures. So now government has taken various initiatives. For example, those who do not have the PAN can file the IT return by simply quoting their Aadhaar number. So it becomes easy. Pre-filled tax return. So if some amount of tax has already been deducted in your account, that will automatically be reflected into your income tax return. A scheme of faceless assessment, very, very important. So the economic survey of 1718, it has clearly shown that the people in India, they face the harassment from the tax officers. So for avoiding that kind of harassment, we are coming up with the faceless assessment. Faceless assessment basically means that at the time of finalization of the income tax calculation, the income tax return, the electronic notices will be reduced from a central system. So the any officer cannot decide who will get the notice or not. At the same time, the client will also don't know. The assessee will also not know. The citizen will also not know that who is the officer who is dealing with this case. So in both the cases, there will be no personal interaction. So there is no chance of the corruption. There is no chance of the hasslement. Therefore, this initiative can be very, very good in the long term. Cases for scrutiny shall be allocated to assessment units in a random number. Notice is issued electronically by central cell. So the notice for the scrutiny or cross verification will be sent by the central system automatically. So friends, this is not that much important point. You just need to have a reference. Then there are other reforms. Special administrative arrangements to be made by the CBDT for pending assessments of startups. So startups के लिए हम special arrangement की बात कर रहे हैं. No inquiry or verification of such startups to be carried out by the assessing officer without obtaining the approval of the supervisory officer. हमने ऑलरेडी स्टार्टअप वाले केस में देखा था ये कि स्टार्टअप का जो असेसमेंट है उस केस में आपको जो इनकम टैक्स ऑफिसर होगा उसको अपने सीनियर से अप्रूवल लेकर के ही कैलकुलेशन कर सकता है वो. Pre-filled tax return we have already seen. Scheme of faceless assessment, and the case selected will be through the central cell electronically. Then this is very, very important initiative for the ease of doing business. Increase in the threshold turnover for lower rate of corporate tax. Corporate tax means the tax that is levied on the company. And till now, currently, the 25% tax is applicable to the companies who have the annual turnover of up to rupees 250 crore. But now, this limit has been extended to 400 crore. So now, if the company is having the turnover of up to rupees 400 crore, they are supposed to pay 25% tax. And the company who are having the turnover of more than 400 crore, they are supposed to pay 30% tax. So less than 400 crore turnover, 25%, and otherwise 30%. So the government is saying that in this category, only 0.7% firms fall and 99.3% firms fall in the first category. So for the 99.3% firms, the tax rate is now 25%. Electronic vehicles, we are promoting the e-vehicles so that we don't need to consume the petroleum. We are not dependent upon the outside country for the petroleum. The environmentally it is more friendly, and there are many other factors. So for further incentivizing the electrical vehicles, we have decreased the GST rate from 12% to 5%, and the additional income tax deduction is being given to the buyers for the interest they have paid on the loan they have taken for buying the electrical vehicles. Now in the banking sector and the regulatory reform. So friends, banking sector is very, very important because the bank is a financial intermediary which is channelizing the financial resources from the saver to the investor. So there are various issues being faced by the banking sector. One is the NPA and second is the credit slowdown. So for NPA, we have already come up with various reforms, and the health of the banks has been weakened because of the NPA. So to improve the status of banks' health, we have come up with rupees 70,000 crore capital infusion so that they can lend that amount to further to the economy, and the amount, when the amount goes to the economy, then it will increase the capital. Capital will increase the investment. This investment will increase the production. This production will increase the jobs, and these jobs will increase the income. Income will decrease the poverty. When the people's poverty is reduced, they will demand more goods. When their demand is increasing, again the production will increase, and this will become a virtuous cycle. So overall, we can see that this provision of credit through the bank, from the bank, has a multiplier positive benefits. Then this is a very small initiative. Government will initiate the steps to empower the account holders to have control over the deposit of cash by others in their account. So in this, basically the government will ensure that when the other people are depositing the cash in your account, you have a control. Return the regulatory authority. This is very, very important. So in the housing financing sector, now the regulation is with the National Housing Bank. However, if we see, the overall credit is managed by the RBI. So to ensure that there is a proper coordination, now we are saying that this regulation of the housing financing sector will be shifted from NHB to the RBI, right? This is very important reform. Strengthening the regulatory authority of RBI over the NBFCs to ensure robust regulation. So in the recent years, this NBFC crisis has happened, for example, IL and FS crisis, and now the government is saying that the regulation of the NBFCs should be strengthened so that such kind of crises do not happen again. So there are three important initiatives. First is regarding the 70,000 capital infusion. Second is in the housing financing sector, the control will be shifted from the National Housing Bank to the RBI. And third one is the IL and FS regulate. Because of this crisis, the NBFC's regulation will be strengthened. There are some data regarding the NPAs. So NPA is reducing. This is a very good thing. Record recovery is happening. Credit growth is happening. 70,000 crore and account holder growth. So we have already discussed all these points. Now coming to the NBFC. So friends, if we see in the financial sector, there are two important players, the banks and the NBFC. We are doing various kind of reforms in the banking sector, At the same time, we also need to take care of the NBFC, non-banking financial companies. So for the non-banking financial companies, we are coming up with various kind of reforms. First is ensuring that NBFCs that are fundamentally sound. So see, not every NBFC is a weak NBFC. And after the IL&FS crisis, this NBFC sector has become very vulnerable. Even the very good NBFCs, they are not getting the funds. And because of that, their health is their health, and whereas the people's trust over them is becoming weak. So to give them further strength, the government is saying that they will continue to get the funding from the bank and the mutual fund without being unduly risk averse. So the bank and the mutual fund companies don't need to be very, very careful in lending to the NBFC who are already very much sound. Secondly, for purchase of high-rated pool assets of financially sound NBFCs amounting to a total of 1 lakh crore, government to provide one-time 6-month partial credit guarantee to PSB for the first loss of up to 10%. So here the point is that when the public sector banks, they invest into the NBFC, and in case there is some loss because of this investment, so instead of profit, there can be loss also in any investment. So if there is any loss, for this loss, the government will provide some kind of credit guarantee up to 10%. So the purpose here is that the NBFCs continue to get the funding from the banks. Then government to take necessary steps to allow all NBFCs to directly participate in the TREDS platform. What is TREDS platform? In the TREDS platform, the companies basically maintain their transaction details, and this TREDS platform is also connected to the GST portal. So when the NBFCs are connected to the TREDS portal, then they can lend to the businessmen also, because all the important transactions of the businessmen are also recorded on the TREDS, and the banks are actually providing the discounting facility to the businessmen through this TREDS portal. So through this, the NBFCs can get more opportunities to lend. The requirement of creation of DRR for NBFCs to rate fund in public issues will be done away with. Debenture redemption reserve, this is not that much important point. So here, which are the important points? The first one, the second one, and the third one. Then financial sector reforms. So first is disinvestment. The disinvestment receipt target will be enhanced. Disinvestment is a very, very important aspect, because the public sector companies, they need to have the wider stakeholders, so which leads to their increasement in the efficiency as well as the better governance. Secondly, it is a source of funding for the government also. The government can invest the funding received from the disinvestment to the other sectors, especially the social sectors. So for this purpose, meet this public shareholding norm of 20% of all listed PSU. So all the listed PSUs, they are supposed to have at least 25% public shareholding, right? Public shareholding means the shareholding by the common public. So this norm is not completely complied. That is, in many PSUs, the public shareholding is not 25%. It is below 25%. So now the government is saying that we will ensure that is in all the PSUs at least 25% public shareholding is there, right? So the government shareholding will be reduced and the public shareholding will be enhanced. And by this initiative, the government will get funds from the public, right? And one of the policy in the disinvestment sector, one of the major theme of the disinvestment policy is that the public sector undertakings belong to the public. Therefore, these public sector undertakings should be owned by the public, because they are the resource of the public, right? So the ownership of the public should be enhanced. So this 25% target meeting is also one of the exercise in that direction only. Then and the raising of foreign shareholding to maximum permissible limit for better public ownership. So we are also saying that the FDI can also be attracted. This is not that much important. Then steps will be taken to separate NPS trust from the PFRDA. So friends, pension sector is a very important sector. The NPS trust and the PFRDA, they will be separated because the operation and regulation can't be with a single authority. Then for attracting the FDI, so why FDI is important? Because we require a lot of investment, and in India we are having the highest growth rate, and the government is also taking various ease of doing business reforms. So the foreign direct investment is attracted towards India, right? So to attract more investment, we are coming up with various more reforms. So what are those reforms? Government is also examining the suggestion for further opening of FDI in aviation, media and insurance sector. So friends, FDI reforms were undertaken in 2017. In 2017, the consolidated FDI policy was introduced, under which the sectoral limits were improved and the automatic approval route was enhanced. Now the government is further coming up with more reforms in the FDI sector. 100% FDI to be permitted for insurance and intermediaries. Local sourcing norms we have already discussed, and this is important. Hosting annual global investor meet in India using the National Infrastructure Investment Fund. So friends, in India the sovereign fund is very less as if we compare with the other countries. So using the NIIF, we will be hosting the global investors meet into India. This we have already discussed. Now coming to the space sector. In the space sector, now we are going for commercialization of the Department of Space, right? So we are proposing a one public sector enterprise, NSIL, which will be a commercial arm of the Department of Space. This will provide the commerciality. We will be able to get the benefit of the R&D done by the ISRO, and we can provide various products to other companies, other countries, like launch vehicles, transfer of technology and marketing of space products outside India. So what will be the benefit? The benefit will be that our goodwill will increase outside India, then we will get the foreign exchange reserve into India, and our space research and development will further be improved and enhanced. Then for the NGOs in the social sector, the voluntary sector, right? So if you are studying for the GS paper 2, you can mention this initiative. Electronic fundraising platform, a social stock exchange. So social stock exchange has been introduced, under which the social enterprises can list themselves and they can get the electronic funds, right? So right now we have various kind of platforms like crowdfunding, or maybe the government will provide the funding to the NGOs. So this is a new kind of initiatives where the social entrepreneurs can get the fund on their projects. Then we are also going to have the 50th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, and we are targeting that India be the open defecation free by 2019, 2nd October. Rashtriya Swachhata Kendra will be inaugurated in the Rajghat. Gandhipedia will be developed to sensitize the youth and society. Now, very important, the vision for the decade. So friends, this vision you should use in your essay, or maybe you can use in the conclusion of your answers. For example, you can say, as per the Union Budget 2019-20, one of the important aspect of vision for the decade is blue economy, right? So similarly, you can put these points in your answers. So this is how you can utilize the budget into your mains answers. Or if you are writing the essay about India, then you can write all these points and say that India needs to focus on these points if we really want to grow to $5 trillion status. So what are these areas? The first area is the infrastructure, the social infrastructure as well as the physical infrastructure, very important. Then digital India, which reach every sector. So friends, right now digital India is not having the proper reach in the agriculture sector. So we need to have the digital agriculture. Pollution free India, and with green mother earth and blue skies, very important. You should use this kind of words in your essay, in your mains answers. So this will make your answer unique. Make in India, with special emphasis in MSME, startup, defense, automobiles, electronic, medical services. Why MSME? Because it is the job provider. Startups, again, they are the job creators. Defense manufacturing, it will provide the strategic autonomy as well as the benefits of economy of agglomeration. Automobiles, again, this is a sector which provides opportunities to the ancillary component making industries. Electronics, again, the job intensive sector. So we are focusing upon the job intensive sector. Blue economy, very important. Then self-sufficiency and export of food grains, pulses, oil seeds, fruits and vegetables. So we have not only self-sufficiency but also the export. That is why we have come up with the Agriculture Export Policy 2018. Space programs, especially the Gaganyaan, Chandrayaan and satellite programs. Water, in the water sector, very important, water management and the clean rivers. We have already come up with Jal Shakti Ministry. Health, for the healthy society we need Ayushman Bharat, well-nourished women and the safety of children. And finally, and the very important, I will say this should be the first point, Jan Bhagidari, the people's participation. So with the people's participation, we can ensure that all the government initiatives get a successful end. When the people participate, the initiatives like social audit, citizen charter, right to information, everything can be successful. And the vision of minimum government, maximum governance, that we have the minimum number of people in the government, but still we can provide the maximum reach to the people. This objective can be achieved. So the point is that people's participation should be the topmost priority. So when you're writing the answer of GS paper 2, you can give a reference that the budget 2019-20 also highlighted that Jan Bhagidari is, should be one of the aspect of vision for the decade, right? Friends, listen to our other videos. How to study the economic survey 18-19 that has just been released, and I'm also coming up with various videos over there. How to score 140 plus marks in the general studies paper 3, and I am also having some videos in the channel on disinvestment, inclusive growth and more topics. So you will get the complete analysis of this topic. So thank you very much. Stay happy, stay learning.